Okay, so any questions about comments, disagreements, stories about what I've covered so far? Yeah. Here's, wait, microphone back there. There we go.
Yeah, early on you mentioned how 30% of people don't give, and how amongst that 30%, 80% stated they don't give because they're not solicited.
Right.
I'm just curious, the veracity regarding that statement, if you think maybe some people said that because they didn't want to be embarrassed and just say, well, because I'm greedy, versus actually not being solicited, because it seems hard to believe that in this day and age you're not going to be solicited for a donation.
Well, those are not. There's not a study that I've done, and I'm not a. But that's a good question that he asked about what's the real proof that the people that don't give. I said 80% of them say they weren't solicited. I mean, people say all kind of things, right? So I can't say why they said that. That was the excuse that they offered. But when you have a statement like that offered by that large percentage of people, you have to think that even if 30% of them lied about it, there's still a significant number of people in that group who feel, I am not being asked. And actually, I think it's not hard to believe at all, because a lot of that group are pretty marginalized people. For example, I have a friend who's the ombudsman to all the skilled nursing facilities in Alameda County, which is the county where I live, and she said that 3 of those nursing homes, of the Medicaid nursing homes, the people in those nursing homes received 1 or fewer visitors per year that were not volunteers. So that's a huge population of very sad, not their own fault, alienated people. And I also think there's a huge, and this is actually, if you read Elizabeth Boris or some of these other researchers, she talks about the massive overemphasis on major gifts, and I really, really agree with that. What we read about in the paper are these gifts of $1 million, $500,000, $100 million. What we see on the radio, what we see on social media, this person gave 1,000, this person gave 5,000, this person gave this much money. And I think if you're a person, and this would be a lot of people here in Las Vegas, who work full-time, year-round, have probably more than one job for probably minimum wage, and so they think I would give $50, but how long does it take them to earn $50? Really, to net $50, probably the best part of a day, half a day at least. And they think, I'm going to give to an organization who's, but all I hear about is 1,000, 10,000, a million. I think people don't do it. And there's a lot of evidence, and some of you probably read it, was in the paper, that last year we lost a lot of donors, that a lot of people just simply stopped giving. And people said, well, because of the tax plan, that is absolutely not true. There's no evidence that that's the case. People said because they're poor, the clear evidence is that poor people actually give in higher numbers and a higher percent of their income than wealthier people, so that isn't the case. I think it's that they're discouraged. They're very discouraged, like your gift doesn't mean anything. And you see that in annual reports. You see in an annual report they'll list all the donors. The biggest donors will be in big type, the less big and less type. The small units will be in little bitty type. Okay, what does that say to a person? A lot of times, I saw an annual report the other day that said, and 100 and 300 other people who gave less than $50. They don't even get to be in type, right? So there's a lot of ways. I really think we have to kind of look at this, and especially those of you who have a small donor base, welcome every gift. A person who starts at $15, first of all, if $15 is a lot to a person, I want to honor that, right? I want to say thank you. You could have spent it somewhere else. You gave it to me. I'm grateful. But also, people are not going to stay at $15. They're going to, this is something that colleges and universities know. At most colleges and universities, you have, and you know this if those of you who have recently graduated or if you have kids who have recently graduated, you have no sooner taken off your cap and gown than you have a text message. Okay, this is like Wesleyan, Brown, all these kind of Ivies. You have a text message. We need 100% giving from the class of 2017. Right? Just send in $1. Do anything you can. It's like right away. Is that because it costs them more to receive those gifts than the gift? But what are they looking at there? Long horizon. Long horizon. These kids, these young people that just graduated, they have $5 now, but they will not always have only $5. But we get them in right now. Later they'll be, lawyers and senators and this and that, and they'll give us a lot more money. So, very, very good question. I think you're raising a really good point. All right, any other questions? Okay, so let's go to this. To raise money, you need to have a goal. You can't just say to people, please give what you can. Oh, well, what do you need? Well, whatever we can get, right? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. If you go into a store, we know from marketing studies, people go into a store, they do not buy a product if the price is not on the product. They don't take it up and ask, how much is this cleanser? They simply go and buy something else. Some of you may have had this, some of you older people, like myself, may have had this experience. There used to be a kind of a custom with very fancy restaurants that the men would be handed the menu with prices, and the woman would be handed the menu without. I only pray to God that this is no longer true, but this was true in the 60s. And I remember going out with this guy in high school, and to this fancy restaurant, and here's this menu. I have no prices, and I think this poor guy, mows lawns and whatever. So, he was a student. He was my classmate, and I did not know what to order because I had no idea what's cheaper. Is niçoise? Of course, I found niçoise. Is niçoise cheaper, or is a hamburger cheaper? I don't really know what to order. And it was like the whole thing was completely awkward. And you see this over and over. You go to a garage. Somebody talked about a garage sale. You go to a garage. You look out. Your neighbor's having a garage sale. And you see they have. Oh my God, that's a really nice little table. I'm going to run out before anybody gets there. And you go over. The neighbor hasn't put a price on it. So you go, how much do you want for that little table? I could use that. Oh, well, whatever you want to pay. I mean, you're my friend. You just say what you want to pay. Oh no, because really you wanted to pay 50 cents, but you feel kind of like, should I really say 50 cents, or and then I just stayed in bed. Okay, so it's very, very. You need to have a goal. You need to say, we need to raise this much money in this period of time to do this thing. So who has a goal? Who has an actual specific goal? What's your goal?
X-ray machine, $50,000.
$50,000 for an X-ray machine. Okay, somebody else. Yeah. $6,000 or $7,000 for clean water. Okay? Anybody else? Yeah.
Transport van.
Transport van, what's that? 50,000?
Yeah.
50,000 when it's fixed up.
Yeah.
Fixed up nicely so animals don't bang around in it. Mm-hmm. Okay? All right. So we have a goal. So 50,000, who said that? You're going to be very happy with this example because it's 50,000. Okay. So when we have any goal, we've discovered over many, many years of doing campaigns any old willy-nilly way that generally if you just do the campaign, what's going to happen is a few people are going to give you a lot of money, some people are going to give you less money, and a bunch of people are going to give you little money. So now that we've observed this since, for 10,000 years, we can plan around it. And this is called a gift range chart. How many of you have ever seen or heard of a gift range chart? Yeah, it's pretty common, or sometimes called a gift table. And it's not science. This is really not science. It's kind of like drawing a map on your house, a map to your house on the back of a napkin. So it's kind of like that. It's not exact. But generally speaking, to meet any goal, so I have an example up here, 50,000. To meet any goal, you need 2 gifts that equal 10% each of the goal. If you can get that, you're in good shape. You need 4 gifts that together also equal 10% of the goal, and then you need another set of gifts that equal 10% of the goal. If you can get 30% of your goal from about 15 to 20 people, and ideally even fewer, even sort of 10 to 15 people, you will make your goal. So people sometimes call me, they have big goals in mind. We need to raise $1 million. Do you think we can do it? So I don't know. I'm not a psychic, but here's what I know. If you can have 2 people give you 100,000, 4 people give you 50,000, and somewhere between 7 and 10 give you 25,000, yes, then you can meet your goal. Because there's something very magnetic about those big gifts that start things off. And you probably have this experience where you go to an event and there's kind of a ribbon cutting or something, and they'll say, and tonight we're really happy to unveil our, thing that we've done, and our total goal is $250,000, and we're really pleased that we've already raised 100,000 of it. And you think, how did they do that? I've only been here 15 minutes, right? But the fact is they've been raising it for some time, and then they walk in with that. So this is just a very simple chart. You could bring your chart down below 250. You could do $150. I wouldn't go too much below 50. I think at that point, people will give some amount, and that's fine. But I wanted to spend a second on this thing. So I need 8 prospects in order to get 2 gifts. Does that make sense? Do you remember that from before? Okay. But here I need 30 prospects in order to get 10 people to give me 1,000. That's not a 4-to-1 prospect to donor ratio, right? So why did I do 30? Is that a typo? No, it's not. I can tell you it's not. So what's going on there? Why do I need fewer prospects as I go a little bit further down?
Because more people will tend to give less money.
Yeah, first of all, more people have that kind of money, right? And they'll tend to give less. What else?
And if they say no to the 5,000, they're going to draw. They can draw your 8 drops.
Yes. If they say no, so these 8 people that I said could give 5,000, and again, I didn't just make that up. I know them. I know they give away that kind of money, and I know they care about my cause. So these are prospects, not just suspects. Okay, 8 people give 5,000. 2 of them gave it, but 6 others did what? We don't know, right? This is one of the only times where trickle-down economics is actually true. Okay? And overall, in terms of actual living, breathing people, I need about twice as many as the number of gifts that I need. So some of you in sometimes with these gift range charts, people are like, this is more people than in my whole town. So, be calm, okay? So that's a kind of a simple chart. I really like these. I find that board members like them. If you say we need $50,000, I'm like, oh my God, how could we ever manage that kind of money? Oh, 40 people at 250. Oh, well, I could be one of those, and we only need 39 more. I mean, it really kind of breaks it down. The donors like it. I always take the gift range chart with me if I'm going to sit with a donor, or I send it out if I'm just appealing to them by email or mail, and I say, you can see our chart. Honestly, many groups, this is smoke and mirrors, but the donor it feels to them like a plan. Oh, you have a plan. And what if I have no idea what to ask the person for? That's what I know some of you are thinking that. Yes. Okay? I'm going to have the chart. I'm sitting. I'm talking with, I don't want to rag on Jane anymore. Kathy, right? Kylie, sorry. Okay, I'm sitting with Kylie, and I say, you can see, Kylie, and I never take my eyes off her, but my hand is on the chart. You can see we need $50,000, and I'm watching. I keep my hand at the top of the chart, my finger, right? So I'm watching her eyes. If they're huge, it looks like she's about to go into a stroke, I move my hand down the chart. Okay? Or I might even say to her, where do you see yourself in this chart? But I keep my hand toward the top. Where do you see yourself in this chart? Okay? And people will name it. But if I just say to her, could you give something, that has a whole different feel. All right? Mm-hmm.
There's a great resource going back to Blackbaud. Even though I hate Razor's Edge, Blackbaud has got tons of great resources. So if you go to their website, Blackbaud Resources Campaign Calculator, you can plug in your goal and it will spit this out for you.
Yeah.
And just print it, do it different, oh, that's too much, that's too little, you can tweak it.
That's exactly right.
Really good resource.
In fact, you can just type into Google Campaign Calculator and it will come up. So it's called Blackbaud, BLACKBAUD. That's the name of the company that owns this database we're ragging on. But they also do a lot of studies, and they have an algorithm that they've shared, and it's called the Campaign Calculator. And you can even just type in Campaign Calculator, and that way you don't have to figure this out. Although I think it's good for your to ward off Alzheimer's to do it. So. Okay, so you get your goal. This is not hard. You get your goal. You get your gift range chart. You can do a goal for a whole year. You could take your entire budget and do it that way. I think actually in a lot of ways it's easier to break it down. We need this much for these 4 months. We need this much for our van. To break it into smaller parts, I think makes your fundraising easier, but it's really up to you. Any questions about the gift range chart? It's a really good planning document. Okay. Here's another little kind of thing I want to share with you. Make sure that everywhere I go in your organization, virtually or in when I actually walk into your physical space, that one of the things I learn is that you raise money from people like me. Everywhere I go, I should be reminded of that, okay? And I use this little picture of one of my interns to kind of say, would he, this intern who can probably afford $12, would he feel like my $12 would be welcomed? So anyone feels like a big gift will be welcome. There's nobody doesn't feel like, oh, my $1 million isn't that welcome. I mean, no one feels that. But what people don't feel is that their $20 is welcome. So on your website is let's just kind of do a little show of hands. On your website, is the donate button prominent? Okay? Like in some websites, it's like an obscure religious experience just to find it. Like, I am on a quest for the donate button. Okay? So, how many of you have a donate button on every page of your website for extra credit? That's great, and you should. Okay? In your e-newsletters, always a URL that leads back to the website, back to the donate button. In the e-newsletter is always something, it could be at the end, it doesn't have to be the lead, that says, we need to raise this much money for this, is always an invitation to give, okay? All the people that hang around your group, all the volunteers, all the friends and stuff, they can talk about the money that you need in addition to everything else you do, right? If somebody says to them, well, how do they get their money? How do they afford that? Well, they actually raise it from people like you. You'd be amazed. Lots of people give. You want to be one of them? And of course, events obviously should have the money built in. And when I come by your physical space, how many of you have a space that you think would sell itself? Like if I saw it, I would be like, yes. Oh, come on. There has to be more than that. You think your space would sell itself? Where's my golden whiskers person? Silver whiskers. Silver, I'm sorry, not golden. Silver whiskers. You don't think your space would sell itself? Yeah, it would. She's got a, what did you tell me, an acre of fenced-in thing where cats roam around, old cats roam around? Half an acre inside and outside, a lot of old cats roaming around, okay? That would sell to me, I can tell you that. Okay, what is your space? An adoption center in the pet supply store, right? I see these a lot at Petco and different pet supply stores, and I am struck by how there'll be a very cute description of each animal, and it's very fixed up nicely, and somebody's there to talk about the animals, but there is no thermometer, no nothing that says you could donate. And you have a lot of people going by, and they're little kids, oh, Mom, can we have a kitten? No, honey, we already have 12 kittens. You know, you kind of see her. And I think if there was just a box there, a little plastic box, and you could say to the kid, why don't you give $1 so other people can adopt these lovely kittens? And then this little kid could go over and put the $1 in, okay? We pass up so many opportunities. Who is good at this? Who is good at reminding you everywhere you look, everywhere you turn, that money is one of the things we need? Who does this very well? Walmart. Walmart, yes, one of our most favorite charities. Let's limit to nonprofits. Red Cross is very good at that, yeah. Mm-hmm. UNHCR, University of Nevada.
No, the
United Nations Refugee Committee, okay? Salvation Army. How about churches? How about Girl Scout? Yeah. I mean, really, you kind of look around at the organizations that do very well with fundraising, okay? Money is very much, it's almost in the background. You know, it's kind of always there. It's not in your face. It's in the background. I like to look at, because I grew up in a church, I think maybe some of you did as well. But compare your own, if you come out of a different tradition, compare your own tradition to what I'm saying about churches. So you walk into a church, okay, so that, let's say up there is the altar. Back here, there'll be a table. On the table will be little flyers about a mission trip. There'll be envelopes, okay? There'll be stuff. So I walk in, I'm not falling for that. I walk up, cripes. Right there on the wall is like usually a poor box or, you know, some kind of, again, thing of the school that we're supporting. Not having to do that, so I'm going to go sit down. I'm going to sit down. Sit right in front of me as I sit down. There's more envelopes with a little pencil, right? Not falling for it. Sometime during the service, because they know, it's just like some people, you just have to get there. During the service, something will come by me in the form of a basket, right? And I will be asked to put money in. I mean, it is unbelievable. If you really look and think how many times they're asking you is unbelievable. I remember the first time I went to a Catholic church. I grew up in a Methodist church. I thought they really have it down, because in the Catholic church, what we use as a basket is actually this thing that's on a stick. And the guy, and I just thought, if I were doing it, I would just be like, come on. Right? You can do better, okay? That was really great. So, we need to remind people, we need money. There's nothing wrong with needing money. And many, many people, the only way they can help us is with money. And they want to help. But if you make it kind of so subtle and so obscure, they will make up, because remember, you're making a movie, they're making movies too. They will make up a movie about you that you have money from somewhere else. If you pay for everything yourself, they will simply think you are wealthy. And that's how you can afford it. Right? And they'll make up a story. Watch yourself. Watch yourself what stories you make up about other nonprofits. Right? That's the stories they're making up about you. So put your need out there, put it right in front of people, and they will give or they won't. Okay? The other thing you need to do is you need to build a team of people who will do some asking. Not everybody will ask in person. Some people will never ask in person. That will never be the thing they do. I talked about this journalist that I'm working with. That's fine. Not everybody, on a team, not everybody can do the, I remember going, this is no offense to people who love baseball, but I think watching baseball is like watching the paint dry. It's like, I don't get it. And the only time anything happens is when I look away, right? Then somebody actually hits the ball. So, but what's really amazing is if you go to, well, this is probably true of any sport. I should probably use basketball since this is March Madness. But I went with my father-in-law to a baseball game, and he loves baseball. And he could explain everything that was going on, all the strategy, what they're thinking, the signals. It was amazing. I was like, wow, there's a lot happening here. I just saw a bunch of guys standing out, So, but anyway, I'm looking at the little thing they hand you about each player. And there's this player, and they have what, RBI, runs, bases, what's the other, I forget what's the other thing. And here's one guy, and he's 0. He gets 0 runs, 0 hits, 0. I was like, why does this guy get to be on the team? Is he like the son of the owner or something like that? Like, this is ridiculous. My father-in-law's like, he's the pitcher. Who knew the pitcher does not have to hit, does not need to know how to hit at all? And I immediately thought, this is exactly how boards are, right? Like, you have some people who are pitchers, and they can't hit. You have some people who are great hitters. You have some people that are really good at outfield. And that's what we need in our organization. We need people who have a variety of skills, but some cross-section of them have to be askers. And you need to kind of zero in on that. These askers, ideally, and I think Amy Eisenstein covered this, ideally are on your board. But in real life, they are not all on the board. In real life, there are all kinds of people. And I think there are people, I'm working with a campaign right now, that 3 of the people on it are like, I don't want to be on the board. I will work, we're doing a campaign called $50,000 in 6 weeks. And they said, I will work for 6 weeks, I will raise this $50,000, and then I want to be done. I love this organization, but it is not going to be an ongoing commitment of mine. And it's a really great thing, and they're going to help, and that's going to be that. How many of you think you have actually a team already? A fundraising team? Good, okay. So how did you manage to build it into a team?
Well, it was separated off. It was separated off from our board as the fundraising committee. So there's 2 or 3 from the board that naturally took that position and then started recruiting people.
Right. And people who are good at fundraising know other people are good at fundraising. They kind of, we kind of hang around together. So, okay. So how many of you would say that your board actually does know that one of their jobs is to give money? Because the first time you ever ask for money in person, you should always get a yes. Did you know that? First time you have to get a yes. Because the first person you ask is who? yourself. If you won't give, we're off to a rough start, right? It's like, I'm not giving. Okay. What do you know about this group that I should know? Sometimes board members say, I give time. Well, we've already discussed that. That's great. Board members give time and money. That's their job. Donors give money. Volunteers give time. Some volunteers give money, some donors give time. That's fine. But board members is where it all comes together in an example. Time and money. That's their job. To give money, to raise money. They have many other jobs as well. They have to hire and fire the director. They have to approve the budget. I mean, they have a lot of jobs. But they have a job of witnessing. I believe in my heart this is a fabulous group. And here's proof. I'm giving money and I'm giving time. That's their testimony, right? So if you have a board that isn't clear on that, you need to get them to be clear. In real life, we often have board members that got on, who knows how, friend of a friend. Some of you don't have any term limits, so the person stays on until they're dead, which cannot come soon enough. I mean, it's like, you just have all these kind of random people that show up, and sometimes they're really good at one thing, which is fine. So having a committee, a fundraising committee, I think is in real life, is how we often do it. And it's some board members and some others. Every fundraising team needs a cross-section of people. So some people ask for money and some won't. I told you that. Some love events and some don't. Don't make these big, heavy introverts go to events. They hate events, okay? How many of you would say you're a person who, does your best work by yourself? Raise your hand. You prefer to work alone. Okay? How many of you say you do your best work or you really enjoy working in a team? Okay. And some of you are like, I don't enjoy working, so I'm not raising my hand. No, just kidding. Some of you may not care one way or another. I find in the humane movement, in the animal welfare movement, there's a lot of people who prefer to work alone. This in the other kinds of social services, way more people will prefer to work in teams. But this is a thing that attracts kind of people work with one or two people. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But then if you're a person who prefers to work alone, you probably don't want to be on a team. Do stuff that you do alone. Let the team people be on a team. Okay? How many of you would say that if I put two names in front of each of you, two prospects. Prospect, again, what's the definition of a prospect? What would we characterize them? What?
Breathing.
Oh, they're a little more than breathing, but they are alive, that's true. What else?
You know them, they have capacity, they have interest.
Yes, you know them, they have capacity, they have interest. That's a prospect. Breathing is a suspect. Okay. That's essential to being the beginning of being a prospect. All right. I put two prospects in front of you. Each of them could give $1,000. That's a decent amount of money for all of these groups, right? All of you. One is someone you know, and one is a stranger, but you have a name. Someone has said, use my name to this person. So you don't know them, but someone else knows them. You have a door opener there. How many of you would prefer to start with a stranger? Raise your hand. How many of you would prefer to start with a friend? Okay, and then other people, a bunch of you again, I'm not starting. Not working, I'm not starting. Okay, so how many of you don't care? You wouldn't care. It would be equally hard or easy, okay? Good. If you looked around and you saw how the voting went down here, okay, you would see that of the people who voted, which wasn't all of you, half of you preferred the stranger and half of you preferred the friend. The world falls very evenly into those two camps. So know yourself. If you prefer to not approach your friends, then you will be very busy. There are plenty of strangers, right? If you prefer to do your friends or your family, then do that. Play to your strengths, okay? How many of you say you prefer working with institutions, corporations, foundations, things like that? Okay, one person, okay? That's fine. You may find some people like that. They prefer that. Some people start there. That's where I started. I started working in churches and synagogues. And I like that a lot. And I feel very grateful that that was where I started because, they're set up they raise money, they give it away, they talk about money. It's very easy. And then I moved on to people after that. So you need to know who you are, and you need to balance your team. Does that make sense? Okay. Then every team member, and this is your board, your volunteers, everybody, need to be able to do the following things. Name your mission in one short sentence. It's easy to remember. I think people were really good at that when we did that earlier. How about 3 important accomplishments? What have you done in the last year you're proud of? Let's get some examples. What have you done? What did you do in 2018 that you are really proud of? Okay, right here.
We actually have a pet food bank here in Las Vegas, and we reached, at the end of the year, 500 pets every single month.
500, wow.
500 pets, 600,000 pounds of dry food going out, 15,000 meals a month.
6,000 pounds of dry food, 15,000 meals a month, 500 pets a month is unbelievable. Yeah. Really letting some people who couldn't afford food keep their pet, ensuring that the pet stayed alive. I mean, this is very, very important basic work, right? Another accomplishment. Oh, up here.
We were able to adopt out over 4,000 animals into forever homes and invested over $450,000 in medical care.
Whoa, okay. That's amazing. Okay, one more. One more on this side.
Yeah, so we transferred over 1,000 animals from the West Coast, other places into NHS. So like transferring like cats, dogs in to be adopted, we were able to get them from other shelters. Yeah, kill shelters and bring them in.
Okay.
As far out as Hawaii and all up and down the West Coast and throughout the state of Nevada.
Wow, okay. That's fantastic. And that was I know and for other reasons, that was a very important piece of work around the fires that we were having in California. Yeah, because there were thousands of animals that were, the shelters had burned to the ground. So those accomplishments, goals for the current year. What do you want at the end of this year, what do you want to say you did? Just have a couple. What's your goal? Yeah.
Spay and neuter, vaccinate, and microchip 85 dogs and cats.
Okay.
Living on the street.
Spay, neuter, vaccinate, and microchip 85 dogs and cats currently living on the street. Another one. Yes. Back. Go ahead.
We're looking at working with IBM, their Watson artificial intelligence to interface with most major shelters in the United States and basically develop a common language for dogs and cats, like as far as breeds and whatnot, to pair them with rescues throughout the U.S. based on needs. So it'll know, the system basically will know these animals are needed in this market and they're overpopulated in this market and automatically pair needs with wants.
Cool. Okay. That sounds good, and I'll just say that you'd have to, I'd have to ask you more about that to even understand it. But it sounds like a really great thing. Okay? All right. Then you can talk about your budget, okay, and talk about how your organization raises money. Everybody needs to be able to do this. And I think the way to have that happen is in your trainings, even the volunteer trainings, where the volunteers are learning what to feed the animals or how to give shots or anything like that you teach your volunteers to do, that you also do this, that they learn how to talk about the organization. Otherwise, it becomes very, very insular. Okay, I used to live in Tennessee, and the chair of the board, I was executive director of an organization, and the chair of the board was actually a Roman Catholic nun, and she'd been the principal of a high school. And she ran our board the way she had run her high school, okay, which you would think would be a disaster, but it was unbelievable. So we had on our board, so we were in these 4 Appalachian states, we had all kinds of people on the board. We had a couple people who really were functionally illiterate. They really had a very hard time reading. We had retired coal miners. We had this one very wealthy guy who would be like, oh, I'm just tired. I think I'll go to Paris. And off he would go. I mean, so it's really super poor people, really uneducated people, very well educated people. I mean, an unbelievable range of people on this board. And she would make us, we would start every meeting, okay, why are we here? Why are we here? So somebody say, oh, it's the third Thursday. No, we're not here because it's the third Thursday. We're here because we believe, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I forgot. Okay, so then they would kind of sit up a little straighter. And then she would have like coupons or fun little prizes. Okay, who can say our 3 accomplishments? Who could say our 3 things that we're aiming toward? What's our budget? How far along are we to the budget? How many donors do we have? And she would do these drills every single board meeting. And I thought people would be like, oh, this is so cheesy. They totally got into it. And what's true is I had complete confidence in every single person on that board. I knew they could be anywhere talking to anybody and they would be on message. They would know exactly what to say. And I think you have to drill people. I mean, those of us who are doing this work every day, those of you who are staff in particular, you're doing this work every day, so you know this stuff. But your board doesn't. They're doing it a few hours a month at the most, right? And you need to drill them in that. So do that. And then I think also every board member, particularly, needs to have a plan of their own. So this is an example. So here's dear Betty Lou, right? She's just a great person. She's going to give $100. She's going to raise $1,000 at a house party. She wants to bring in 20 new people, a lot of her neighbors that don't know about what we do. She's going to create a giving page, okay? She hates the phone-a-thon. Board members, all of you who are board members, you have the right to say, I don't like this and I don't want to do it. You have the right to do that, and you should exercise your rights. And she said, I won't come to the auction. Done with auctions, okay? So everybody has a plan like this. So you can imagine when you're the development director or the executive director, or even just the main volunteer, as some of you are in your, you have something to hold people accountable to. They showed up and they said, this is what I'll do, and you can kind of go over it with them. Do any of you have a system like this in place right now? Okay, you do? And can you tell us about it?
Our system is slightly different in that our board members are required to do certain things, but it's actually the opposite of that. For instance, they have to buy a certain number of seats or tables at our events. They have amounts of sales that they have to do for our duck race fundraising. So we actually don't use an individual plan. We use across the board
plan. And that works well?
Well, I feel it does, but I think maybe with reading this that there might be tweaks that we can make to it.
Yeah, well, but another rule is if it's not broken, don't fix it. Okay.
Well, and I shouldn't say that it's a complete success because there are differing levels that people give. Some people give way above that amount, and then others give the minimum amount.
Yeah. So that's another approach, that everybody has the same obligations. And in some ways, I think people are attracted to that, and obviously it's working. So one reason we're attracted to it because it can work. Because it's very easy to compare. How many ducks did you sell for the duck race? You have a certain number. The problem, I think, with events, I just kind of offer this, is you either have to invite everybody on your board, has to be kind of a person who likes events and has friends who likes events, and then they can fill their tables pretty easily. But like I work with this organization that is all kids that are on the spectrum, on the autism, Asperger's spectrum, and they're pretty far down the spectrum, right? So something I did not know, and some of you may know this if you work in that arena, that kids who are on the autism, Asperger's spectrum, it's not unusual for their parents to be ever so slightly on that spectrum as well. Like that didn't, So I'm working with all these parents who are on the board, and they are, so I said, well, you should invite people to this event. That was well, who? Well, your friends. They don't totally have friends, right? They have a couple friends, and they don't like to, and I said, well, I think it's going to be really fun. It'll be like going out anytime. And then one goes, I really don't go out, right? It's sort of, they were as if you were with a bunch of people who were super shy or super introverted. And I realized, they would do other stuff, and they did other stuff. So you either have to kind of then make sure your board is attracted to the kind of stuff that everybody does, or you can individualize it. But either works, and your testimony says that works. All right? So what I want you to do now is in your organization, most of you came with someone from your organization. I want you to get with those people, and I want you to think, what are the one or two things that you need to change in terms of how your fundraising is done? You cannot change everything. I just gave you like 50 things you could do. You can't do them all. You can do one or two at the most. So figure out what is the thing that we most need to change, tweak, okay, in order to improve our fundraising. Just is there one or two things you need to change, okay? Is that question clear? All right. Get with the people who came from your group, and it'll take about 5 minutes for this. Okay, let's come back. Let's help each other out. I think sometimes when you're trying to think and, you take some person breezes in from out of town and has these ideas, and then you're thinking, how does this work back at my place, right? And you're kind of a little bit stretching your brain and not maybe coming up with as much as you want. It's very helpful to hear what other people actually thought in the room. So if you thought of something, or if you're already doing something that you think is good, like I really appreciate you said, thinking we all have the same thing. I think that's really helpful. So help each other out and say, what are one or two things that you either are doing now, which is fine, or you could do, one or two things you could do that would just move your organization a little further along in this fundraising thing, particularly this thing about teams, okay? Over here, yes.
Your middle blurb about every team member being able to do something, our director here, she mentioned that we think this would be helpful because we don't actually know exactly how our board members are representing us and presenting themselves. So, this would be some guidelines to help everybody.
Yeah, if we go back here to this, and the board members also, they don't necessarily know, what am I supposed to say? You could say, well, here's a structure for you. Accomplishment, a goal, how we raise money. Yeah, give them that structure. Good. All right, so that's just one simple thing you can change. Everybody can have it. You can kind of drill them in it. Okay, let's have another example.
Well, for me, in 20 years of fundraising, it's always, that struggle between important versus urgent and getting out of the weeds and getting, so the example I use is our gala, which is, 4 months of my time. 4 months of my time.
4 months for a gala.
To make, 50 or 60 grand when I could make 5 asks in a week and make 50 or 60 grand. So, and I've been begging the board for years to just get rid of the gala to, with no results. But they won't buy a table. So, and then they want to know why we're only making 50 or 60 grand. But, again, it comes down to just focusing on what's important versus urgent. We all get 1,000 emails a day, don't have to answer them all. And trying to move up that one chart to get to that 50% rate of return.
Yeah.
Maybe that's too general. I don't know if you want to more specific.
I think that's very specific to kind of say, what you want to focus on is, the donors that can give you $5,000 at a pop, they're not sitting at home wondering why you don't call them, right? They're not endlessly checking their phone messages and their texts to see if you texted. They are out and about, and they're being asked by other people, right? So moving up in that way. The other thing about events, he said the gala, you want to get rid of it. They don't want to. All right, here's a middle ground. You keep it. It's great. $50,000 is not a shabby amount of money to make. I'm not doing it anymore. And you simply walk away from it. And watch it. Will they fire you? I really don't think so. I would say, let's call, and then they'll have to kind of rescue it. But for you to spend that kind of time and money, the amount of money it is costing, right, that's probably not even included in the cost of it, I doubt you're netting even. Okay. Right, but the opportunity cost is profound. All right? One or two other things you could do to make a change. Yes?
Well, I love the statement that you made. If you prefer to work alone, don't do a team job alone. And I think about a nonprofit that I run where one of our members is amazing and he gets a lot done, but as a team member, he doesn't always let other folks know what he's doing. Yeah. And so I feel like I play catch up a lot. And that was just such a nice reminder because he does great work. And so it's a good conversation to have. And if it's something that or it's a project that really can be done as one person, that's the person to go to.
Exactly.
If it's teamwork, then let's get other folks on board.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have a kind of a lone wolf on a team, you spend a lot of time catching up with them. People are irritated because it feels like, well, I said I would do that, but then he went and did it, right? Is that helpful? And, this is why people hate teams. Oh, I hate being on a team. Well, because they were on a team with a bunch of people who preferred to work alone, right? Yeah. It's like, cats. Like some cats really are solitary, and there's just no point in trying to get them to change their personality, right? So the other thing, though, about alone is I find, and again, as I said, in this world that we're in, a lot of people do stuff alone. And they'll say, and many people will say, and I would not argue with you for 1 second about this, many people will say, I could do it easier myself. Yeah, of course you could. I'm not going to argue about that. I could do it better myself. Probably so. Not arguing about that. Will you always be alive? No. Right? And we see over and over in these situations with animals that you have one person who's taken in a lot of animals and then they get sick or they die, and then those animals, somebody has to run in there and figure out what to do with them, right? We know that from our work with animals, that needs to be spread out. So use what you know about animals and taking care of animals to run your organization. You already have these skills. You know that some animals have very different personalities. There are dogs that need to be the only dog, the only pet in the house. There are, sometimes you find these little sets of kittens, 3 or 4, and they really shouldn't be separated. I mean, they really are very attached. I was fostering not too long ago this blind kitten and his brother. And they got adopted together because the blind kitten relies, and as becoming a cat, relies on his brother. We know this. We make those accommodations. So we know how to do that with animals. Take that knowledge, apply it to fundraising. It's all the same, really. Mm-hmm. Yeah, except for, the donors don't bark so much. Once in a while. Okay, any questions or other comments or other observations from doing this exercise? Yes. Wait 1 second.
Well, one thing to piggyback on what you're just saying is we have one person on our team who works great by herself, and the other team members who like to be team members like to bother her. So it's important for me to tell them to leave her alone so she can get her stuff done.
Yeah. That's another, yeah.
Telling people what not to do.
Yes. Don't be like pesky little puppies, right? Very good. Any other observations? Over here comes the mic.
Just a quick question. So you talked about board members, and then in our organization we have an executive director and we have a development director. Above and beyond that, we always say everybody is a fundraiser, but when you're talking about every team member, can you give some suggestions of others who might be brought into that orbit, or is that those the basic actors in your mind?
Those are the basic actors, the board, the executive director, the development director. But I actually think if you have a bigger staff, if you have, that everybody on the staff needs to be able to say this. The vet tech, the receptionist, all the different staff you have, they all need to, there's a report that I worked on with my firm and another firm called the Bright Spots Report, and we looked at organizations that did very well with individual donor fundraising and a certain kind of cross-section of those organizations. And one of the things they had in common is fundraising was highly distributed over the whole organization, and every single person knew what their job was. And an example was this group called Asian Law Caucus that works a lot with Asian immigrants. Many don't speak English, and the receptionist is this guy, speaks a couple languages, and he's very warm, and he understood that his job was to treat everyone the same, make people feel welcome, and so on. And as a result of that, because that was always how he was, they had many donors who would come in to see the executive director, and this one person kind of slightly eccentric and in some ways slightly difficult donor would come by, and she would deliberately dress kind of like she was hard up, or she might have even been homeless, and she would kind of come by and he would just talk to her. He would chat with her, and he'd say, "Do you want a cup of coffee?" And he had no idea who she was. And then she wound up giving them like $3 million. It was a test, right? But he understood his job was to welcome everyone, to be hospitable, no matter what. And I thought that, and so when we did this study, he goes, I knew that would help with fundraising, but I wasn't doing it for that reason. I was doing it because it's my moral value. But I thought it was sort of interesting, right? And you see in organizations that, everybody in your organization, and you said you don't know how people are presenting themselves elsewhere. Well, take some control of that, right? Make sure that people are presenting themselves in a way that and I don't think they mean to misrepresent. I don't think they mean to do anything bad, but that's an important thing. But there are other people besides those main players. There are some cross-section of your volunteers. There are some, I'll tell you, where you're going to find a lot of help is in your former volunteers. People that no longer have the energy, for example, to foster, okay? Or they really don't have the energy to do trap, neuter, release. That is high energy work, okay? And they just don't have the energy, or they can't, or I have a friend who just had triplets. She is not going to be doing TNR for a while, except on those triplets. But she's now kind of like, and she said this organization she used to work in doesn't ever call her to do anything because she's like a former person. Former, right? But nobody's former. Everybody is a potential to do something. So I'd round up team members that way. Mm-hmm. When you open your mind up, sort of like if you hear a new word or something, and you think, I never heard that word before, but then all of a sudden you hear it everywhere and you see it everywhere, right? When you open your mind up to the idea that everybody could help you with fundraising, you begin to spot people who can do specific things. And giving them time-limited things to do or very specific things is important. And one final thing I want to say on this before I move on. Don't reward good work with more work. What is the reward for doing your work a lot of times? More work, right? And this is how you train your board. So, some person Bob gets on the board, and he's all ready to go, and yes, I will help raise money, and blah, blah, blah. And then he looks around, and he sees Mary over here. Mary does nothing but flap her mouth occasionally in the board meeting. And he realizes, I could be on this board by working or by not working. And so Bob is not the most ambitious person. He decides to not work. We train board members to do that. Okay? He sees that the reward for work is more work. I'm on a board. I just finished a major gifts campaign with another person on the board and a team. We did very well. We came in, the chair said, we really want to thank him and Maria for doing this, blah, 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 and we have this nice thing for you, and it was this cake from the day-old cake place. And like, really? So anyway, and she says, but that's fine because it's very grassroots. So she says, and we're really also hoping, I was talking to the executive committee, we're really hoping the two of you would now run the auction. No, I will not run the damn, it's like, really? Seriously? This is my reward, day-old cake, and a chance to a chance to continue doing work? No. We have to rethink how we do things a little bit.